Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry there's no music, but my laptop is having issues right now, and that's where the music's stored. So, it is what it is. Uh, a friend of mine, guy you might know, James L, had recommended a couple of kind of like family games that he thought I might enjoy. Some of which are like single player, but things you can do in half hour, 45 minutes, an hour kind of thing instead of big long drawn out games like we're all big fans of. And one of the ones he recommended, and I got, and I actually haven't read it yet. I read part of it, but I don't have any clue as to how to play it. Was this game called The Lost Expedition, and it's a game where you try to trek through the jungle to find legendary explorer Percy Fawcett, who went missing searching for the lost city of El Dorado in the Amazon jungle. And it sounds like I can get behind that. That sounds kind of fun. Kind of 1920s, 1930s explorers club kind of thing. And one of the game mechanics is drawing these encounter cards, and I know a lot of you guys have heard me talk about encounters and whatnot, and so I thought I'd make a video before we trundle on into the weekend. And it's got this huge deck of cards, and they don't have anything on the back or anything, but they're all, not all, but a huge number of them are things that are like not monsters. You know what I mean? Like this one is a bushmaster snake that you run into, and you got to deal with it. But I was thinking, because let me pull out a couple of the ones that were really interesting in the way of not being that ought to be okay. I'll use that one too. I like that one too. Things like clearing, where you find an old campsite or some such of maybe Percy or maybe somebody else. Thick fog, and that's mostly the art, not the glare. Footprints. Wonder what those are. Those look like dinosaur almost. Healing herbs. Old pathway. Things like that. That I was thinking. Why does it always have to be monsters or it's the how many times have you run across like merchants or a caravan, people traveling in wagons that pretty much just ate up game time with unless you want to do some trading or maybe get a rumor or something. It was otherwise, kind of just a waste of time at the table where, okay, there's this wagon. Now we all got to be on our guard because they could be thieves or bandits or murderers or rare creatures. And then they aren't. They're just people doing their day-to-day, which, don't get me wrong, that should be, in the game. But we've all done it. We've all done it a whole bunch of times. And we shouldn't even have to stop. It should be like 3 sentences and not 45 minutes of dealing with that and worrying about that. I know a lot of you guys are into hex crawls and things like that. So that's like, whew, thank God it's not monsters. But, why couldn't it be something, not necessarily mundane, but, something to get us worried as players, but not just going right into freaking combat. Part of some of the conversations I've had the last couple of weeks is, with low-level characters and parties, they have to kind of avoid, like, everything if they want to go into the dungeon and do more than one room and not have to run back home. Well, maybe, like a 50-50 split, 60-40, instead of it being some monsters that you gotta fight, because I've not, in the last 30 years of playing, had an encounter with monsters that led to anything other than combat. Nobody ever wanted to try to parlay or bribe or any of that crap because nobody had any money. That's why they were going on the adventure. They'd spent every last coin they had and, didn't think, oh, these 37 copper, that'll bribe the orcs. Nobody's ever thought that in any game I've been in or tried to, have the magic user parlay with them because he could speak orc or something like that. Why not mix in some things, some encounters, like suddenly it starts raining, or you hear weird noises in the woods, but nothing comes of it, or you find an old pathway, or hey, today the ranger found some healing herbs, under this tree. Let's grab them and grind them into healing paste so that we can get a couple of bonus points on our on our next binding wounds, or here's a couple more that I kind of like. Rope bridge, you got to make a couple of dex checks to get across the rope bridge because it's been there for 100 years and doesn't look too safe, or suddenly there's a mudslide, or one of your buddies got clobbered by leeches, and you got to deal with that. It's not like a whole lot of damage, maybe 1 or 2 points worth of leeches, burn them off, or something like this one. I really like this one too. Spoiled food. Suddenly your rations are they weren't top notch when you got them, and now they're garbage and you can't eat them because they're full of worms or something. And now you got to go forage for a couple of days. I know it's wasting time, but it's more realistic than here comes some hobgoblins that want to kill us because that's what hobgoblins do. There's 30 of them and 7 of us. Yeah, sure, they're going to negotiate. No, we got to kill the hobgoblins and hopefully not die. I'm looking at some of the other ones in here. Thunderstorm, Lost, Minor Injury, Ruins, obviously. Hookworms. I didn't know that hookworms could be killed with black powder. I'm not sure how, but I looked into it, and apparently that's a thing. Or like it's a bear, or it's a wolf, or some coyotes, sniffing around the camp, but they're really not going to mess with you, because you got fire and clanky metal things that they never, most animals you can scare off with just beating a couple of pots and pans, but then there's something like, crocodile, because it always seems to be humanoids, it's always like orcs or bugbears or giants or something. It's never, a jaguar, well, actually, I got eaten by lions in a game a couple months back, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But it really got me to thinking, and I know a buddy of mine said, there's a game system out there where it does have a lot of that, but that was news to me because all of the games that I have, except Wilderness Survival, now this game, it's friggin' monsters and they want to eat you or they want to kill you or they want to do both or whatever, you know what I mean? So my question to you guys is, have you ever had an encounter that wasn't monsters or a caravan that was interesting you'd like to share with me so I could borrow it and steal it and throw it into my next project or my next game or a game down the road, but it can go into the old mental library of tricks up my sleeve, because I'm looking and searching and thinking about things that can happen, things that have happened to me in the wilderness and on hikes and camping trips and other things that could be used. It's not the same stale, boring, it's monsters and you got to fight them. And I don't want to hear, well, try to parlay with them. No, I don't know anybody who really does that. I've not seen it in any of the games I've run. I've not seen it in any of the games I've been in the last, I can't remember it. Not since I was playing the little bit I think I did out of the basic box set or early white box was something like that, even like a notion in the communities that I ran and rolled with. So if you've got some ideas, you want to tell me a little story about an encounter you had that had like little or nothing to do with combat, I'd love to hear it. And if you want to tell me why, people should do it, I know why they should do it. I think it's a great idea that people should, parlay or run or try to bribe, but for the most part, I just don't ever see it done, but that's what I got for you this morning. Help a guy out, help an old DM, with a couple ideas maybe, and who knows, maybe I'll share a couple more with you later on in our journey through this hobby. But until then, folks, as always, you know the line.